Welcome to the second episode of the Curated cast. On our very first episode of the Wednesday Wisdom series, we have with us a very special guest, Martina MacPherson. She has been named as a strategic influencer by the Commentary ESG Influencer Index 2020 and the Modern Slavery Influencer Index 2018. On today's episode, we will learn about the importance of sustainable investment as Martina takes us through her incredible journey towards promoting and implementing sustainability in every sphere of our lives. For all our listeners, if you would like to know more about the conversation with Martina, please visit our website capital.report or click on the link in the description for a published and in-depth version of our conversation today. So thank you so much, Martina, for being here with us today. Would you like to take us through your journey, your professional journey?
So I've been in the ESG space for around 20 years on both buy side and sell side. My name is Martina MacPherson and I represented my day-to-day role at ODDO BHF Asset Management Private Equity, a leading European asset management house with around 58 billion euros under management. 52% of our mutual funds are already in line with ESG criteria, and we have a very ambitious roadmap and trajectory to actually move, the needle on ESG approaches and activities. These include, of course, screening, integration, and active ownership. I'm also leading the Network for Sustainable Financial Markets, the Next Gen initiative. This is actually a think tank supporting sustainable finance, education, training, and capacity building programs, which also includes policy and advocacy in certain areas for the next generation to really engage with them on ESG. And then I have my last leg beyond industry and academia and NGOs. Actually in academia, and this means I'm a academic/visiting fellow at Henley Business School and a guest lecturer at University of Zurich. You might have seen some of the contributions I've made to the AI book last year, the Biodiversity Handbook by Routledge, which is coming out this year, and a new book by RiskNet, which will be published next year on ESG and portfolio construction.
Oh my God, that was quite an intro. So how do you manage to do so many things at once?
Sustainable investing has come a long way. So first of all, when we look at the paradigm shift of what was traditionally classified as socially responsible and ethical investing, that's where a lot of these topics and trends started. And I'm very much still ingrained in this sphere, supporting, for instance, the Women in Islamic and Ethical Finance Forum and their sort of initiatives globally on where ethical investment and ethical ideas and concepts are concerned, especially here in this concept, Islamic finance concepts. But the trajectory has really moved on far. Initial grounding in so-called SRI and ethical strategies. And increasingly, the work that's been done around impact. And impact has been always the sister of the ESG investment sphere, and it's increasingly becoming important and really rightly so, because what we are asking ourselves in the context of the broader issues such as climate change and of sustainable development, what do we want to achieve from here? We have a short time span. We have achieved from an assets inflow, a fund inflows perspective a lot. We're talking around more than 40 trillion of US dollars of assets now in the different fields and spheres of sustainable investing. But is that really enough? And where do we go from here? And to be honest, this inspires me personally as well to find out how we can better shape, define, and assess what we are all doing collectively in the field of ESG investing.
And you are also talking about sustainable investment in a conference that is going to take place really soon. So what can the audience expect?
In the last 5 years, environmental, social, and governance investing has really gone mainstream. It has never been more popular. We have seen the tremendous inflows are highlighted. We just talked in 2012 around a 12 trillion US dollar market. We're now talking more than 40 trillion, depending which research and reference sources you use. But there is clearly still a long way to go. I hope to touch on some of the key regulatory frameworks that are relevant for investors as well as issuers, and of course, for the context of the EU Sustainable Finance Action Plan. And then I'm hoping to assess a couple of the key developments now that are driving active ownership in our market, and the collaborative engagements towards net zero, for instance, towards the broader roadmap of Agenda 2030 for sustainable development, and of course, the broader ambitions that I'm driving here with many investors as part of coalitions towards a just transition, connecting the dots between environmental issues and societal context.
That's really interesting, because we always talk about sustainability in terms of climate change, but we never talk about it when it comes to investment or money related things. Could you please tell us a little bit of, about the importance of green finance at the present time?
Sure. I think green finance very often also been thrown into the mix of ESG and ESG investing, maybe needs its own area of focus and obviously therefore segmentation. I see green or sustainable finance more broader, also involving capital markets participants, and very often what we have seen in the trajectory of green finance, sustainable finance is the focus on green or sustainable bonds. It's very important to note that this is a market, Ushi, that has really gone from something like less than 10 billion to over 600 billion US dollars within a decade. And hence, we have seen also diversification of the type of green bonds or sustainable bonds that have been issued. Project-linked bonds in the first instance, the so-called classical ICMA sustainable bonds, which include green, social, and sustainability bonds these days, as well as increasingly moving away from projects, also entity-linked frameworks and bonds that have been issued by large-scale corporations, for instance, so-called sustainability-linked bonds that no longer just look specifically at projects to be financed, but also take into considerations the broader frameworks that entities have in place for ESG. And this is, again, according to our research in this latest book, one of the major areas for growth, both on the fixed income / bond side, as well as on the green lending side. And activities and volumes obviously speak their own language in this context. But therefore, just to summarize again, very important to note, sustainable finance, its own bucket, and obviously very much heavily supported by many of the different type of issuances we have seen in this field.
Also, you spoke about two of your books, right? One has been published and one is yet to be released. So would you like to tell us something more about it?
Sure, with great pleasure. I mean, I've been contributing to areas of research concerning biodiversity for some time. A few years back, we actually published the current co-editor and I, Professor Dr. Jill Atkins from University in Sheffield, and we worked on a book looking at the extinction crisis, pollinator extinction to be precise, because you might know that 2/3 of our food chain might vanish and definitely be severely impacted with the extinction of the pollinators. And that obviously has major economic as well as ultimately financial consequences for the entire food and supply chain, but also other sectors involved. And from there, our research literally moved more towards looking at other areas of species and biodiversity. And we have now just finished the upcoming Biodiversity Handbook published by Routledge. And we are looking at the entire stakeholder sphere. So, that means, we're highlighting really the full spectrum of taxonomies, solutions, and ultimately multipliers and influencers in this context. And I'm very, very delighted to say we have more than 30 different contributors from around the world and different and interesting concepts for solutions.
You make it sound so interesting, Martina. So how do you consume all of this information? How do you manage to stay at the top of your game?
That's a very good question. I hope I at least touch on some of the major fringes of, what is really happening in our world. But I think it comes with an interest in complex and interconnected issues. Myself, I bring to the table very much a universalist approach and background. I studied law. I also studied philosophy and history of art as lower scale subjects in this broader context of when and where I started my education. Later on, shaped myself towards the finance community with specialization and degrees in this particular area. And then I spend a lot of time in connecting the dots. And by this, I mean, it's ongoing learning, education. I'm teaching, but I'm also taking in, and I'm trying to be part of the conversation. That's literally the key, I think, to what we're trying to do.
You're such an inspiration. So what is your advice to the girls, to the young women who will try to become like you one day?
Oh, thank you. That's a very good, I hope they become their own leading professionals in their own right, but maybe yes, if I can speak in a way as a mentor, and I also had great mentors in the past, so I see there's really a mutually beneficial relationship between mentors and mentees. I think up and foremost, try to educate yourself across your discipline and across the different disciplines that are out there, from socioeconomics to understanding how financial services works, to also different subjects such as social sciences subjects, human sciences subjects. Try to learn and trying to connect the dots. Always continue to learn and to associate yourself with different type of organizations that can help you professionally, but also drive your areas of interest. Because at the end of the day, you're only as good as the motivation that ultimately drives you in achieving.
It comes in a full circle. When you inspire people, and at the end of the day, that person inspires you. We talked so much about your work. So when you're not working, what are you seen doing? Any hobbies that you would like to share with us?
Oh, very much so. For instance, reading. I'm deliberately picking this book, which is right next to me. And it's actually a book by Minouche Safik, What We Owe Each Other. She has been working for the IMF, for the World Bank, for many different institutions. And Christine Lagarde, the president of the European Central Bank, also herself recommended this book recently on LinkedIn. So in my free time, I try to read, but I also try, in all fairness, to spend time with my family. And, family means I have kids. I have also a strong, I see a strong focus and a strong meaning in actually delivering purpose through what you do in your daily life, not only professionally, but also privately. So I really try to engage my kids on many of these different topics. And most recently, as a funny side note, my son asked me how to classify or how to describe what I was doing for one of his school's homeworks. And I said, you could classify me as an eco-warrior.
So is it safe to say that Martina is the Greta Thunberg of investment?
Of transformation finance. I think that would be a way of describing it. And it's interesting that you say that, Oishi, because I recently also took on board a new role as an advisory group member of JET, which is actually a technology-based company that's looking at regenerative system solutions. And by regenerative systems, they're not only looking at nature-based solutions, for instance, which are the first ones that could jump to mind. They're really thinking at conceptual ways of linking the corporate, the investor, and increasingly also the banking community to solutions that can actually help with transformative processes.
Thank you, Martina, for such an insightful preview of your journey. It's been truly inspiring. A quick reminder for our listeners, please visit capital.report or click on the description below for this inspiring and delightful conversation with Martina. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting conversations with top thought leaders and C-suite industry executives. Take care, stay safe.